Okay, this lesson for our Koine project class will consider the controversies around the present tense. We've noticed in 1 John 5:1, a blind spot was not noticing the participle, present active participle, hopistuon. Also Luke 8:13, let me just write that up there and we'll go ahead and get started. In this text, we had this use of the finite verb, pistuusin, and it says they are believing. And when you go read that text, it was referring to they are believing in a particular season for a while, and then it says trials came. So during a trying season, they stopped, and that's a finite verb, that's action. And we know no one is believing who hasn't first believed, and we know no one believes who hasn't first been persuaded to do so by the gospel, specifically the gospel of the grace of God. 1 John 5:1, very common text for us. We'll look at it. Everyone who is believing, so everyone who is believing that Jesus Jesus esten ho Christos, that Jesus is the Christ, ek to theou, out from the God, and this is genetai, perfect passive indicative. It's a finite verb. Has been, you see the reduplicated stem. This is from genao. Has been fathered. And of course, this is antecedent action to this believer. And we all know that the believer's father is God. And this is where the omissive errors, blind spots in Calvinism have been noticed. Also in any of the constructs, if you're not walking through the Koine, and we'll notice how 1 John 3:9 actually the present tense is a solution, but it's not the one that's often taught, and we'll look at that in just a moment. Has been fathered, and of course remains fathered out from the God. Kai, also the one agapon, the one who is loving. And we have this loving the one, I'll capitalize it, this is referring to God the Father, loving the one who gene santa. So this is accusative masculine singular aorist active participle. And it says, so loving the one who fathers, agapa, this is from agapao, kai, is also loving. There we go, loving. And then we have a perfect passive participle, the one gene menon. Now, if you're not doing the Koine Greek class, you can just fast forward to our conclusions. The one who has been fathered, and of course, and remains It's permanent. When you're fathered, it's perfect. Fathered out from him. That's capitalized, of course. Out from him. So we've already noticed what breaks down is when people insist that someone can't stop believing. I think even something called Reformed Wiki took on an assertion by Dr. Charles Stanley, who said even if a person stops believing, it doesn't forfeit the free gift, it doesn't uh, nullify. And then, of course, free grace advocates, Grace Evangelical Society has written much about it. So we'll go to that which is typically the greater controversy. So 1 John 5:1, we pick up. Now there should be, as you notice, there's 24 words here. There's also the same number here. So here we have everyone, and then we have this form genemenon, but we have it in the nominative, not the accusative. Genemenos. So we have everyone who has been fathered, of course, and remains, it's permanent, remains fathered out from to Theou, out from the God. And then we have this word hamartion, sin. We have this here, no. I'm going to write no. And then we have poi a. This is where it starts getting interesting. This is from poieo, doing, but it's third person singular, present indicative active. Remember, present tense is the controversy. So is doing, and here if you want this continuous, uninterruptedly, ongoing, continuous, let's leave it like that for the moment, is doing no, and you notice that's anarthrous, so it's no kind of sin. And this is probably where a lot of information's been missed when you don't notice that anarthrous noun, which emphasizes the kind of. And now this is saying that everyone who has been fathered and remains fathered out from the God is doing continuously, ongoingly, uninterruptedly, no kind of sin. So now you're building a case for exactly what theologians teach, because theology will trump translations. When you try to take a tool such as language and overwork it, you'll violate the greater theology, as Dr. John Owen taught us in the seminary. There's no such thing as a Christian who doesn't find himself contending with sin on a daily basis. There's not a time where we live apart from it. Even in 1 John says, if we say that we're having no sin, then we deceive ourselves. So it's doing no kind of sin. And this says, because hoti sperma autu, his seed, because his seed in him mene is, and let's go ahead, always, continuous, uninterruptedly, abiding, remaining in him. Kai, let's go ahead and make this emphatic. Indeed, hamartanein, from hamartano, it's present infinitive, to be sinning to be sinning, denatai, not he is able, not able to be sinning. Okay, here we go. Hoti, because ek tu theu, try to stay out of your way, ek tu theu, out from the God, gegenetai again. Gegenetai, that's perfect passive indicative. It's out from the God. I think we have that repeated. Out from the God, gegenetai, out from the God, gegenetai. He has been fathered and remains fathered out from the God. So if you notice, this is almost verbatim what is rejected. Let me check our work here. You all can do this on your own, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. See what I left out. Because the one who is believing that Jesus is the Christ, out from the God, out from the God, he has been begotten. And, I left out this one word. Now, this is why I say when we do this class, when you freehand, it'll really help you out. But now you can see we have 24 words, which is interesting. When you look at this in the Koine text, you start seeing these patterns, you start seeing things repeated. So let's go over here. Everyone who has been, check that out, everyone who has been out from the God, sin not, is doing, because his seed in him is always abiding and not able to be sinning, because out from the God. So we've got it. That's really good. If you only missed that one, that's not bad. So now we can move from the Koine, and notice the Koine actually helped us, because in this article by Zane Hodges, I just found this. It's fascinating. He says this proposed translation solves nothing. The regenerate person can express himself only through righteousness, and can never express himself through sin, because he cannot sin. So he's noticing, and those who try to use the present tense to solve this, he was referring to the fact that, here it is. He was referring to the fact that for a number of decades, and I remember this myself in the seminary, and again, Dr. John Owen, when you take systematic theology, he corrected this error. He said for a number of decades, the opinion was popular that the key to understanding 1 John 3:9 is in the present tense, and it says of the verb to sin. In this view, the verb should read, whoever has been born of God does not continue, for his seed remains in him. In this view, prolonged continuation in sin does not occur if one is actually born again. Well, that is an effort to use the text, but it avoids what this actually says, that a person, if you emphasize the continuous action here, which we will, and we notice the anarthrous noun here is doing no kind. You remember in Galatians 2:16, we notice no kind of man is being justified out from any kind of works of any kind of law except through faithfulness of Jesus Christ. Paul then said, even we ourselves, as ones who have noticed that, believe, simple form of action, into Jesus Christ in order that we might be justified out from his faithfulness. So, indeed, to be sinning, he is not able, because this is antithetical. So that regenerate self is what we're speaking of here, and that's in that article, and I'll include that for you. But the regenerate self is doing no kind of sin. There's never a time where the regenerate self will be doing any kind of sin. Now that makes case closed. That we now know our theology is what is more, if you say, developed and recognizes the reality of antithesis throughout the First John's letter, darkness, light, Cain and Abel, so to speak. We have a reference of Cain, who was had never believed, and that was pointed out very clearly. So here's the text, and here's the use, and it really wouldn't be a good place to turn to because in, let's say, the zeal to solve it by saying, well, a person who's truly born again would not persist in sin, then we have also the same assertion is that a person can't be continuously believing unless they're born again. And we have people who are believing in action. So this is a good case. It's just little things can be overlooked and not noticed, but this basically says verbatim what, let's say, free grace advocates, those who teach that which is born of God, First John 5:4, speaking of what is generated, produced out from the Spirit, it's always being produced out from the Spirit. So it's a good lesson. It's just you'll notice how huge this is and implications, and it really helps people with your theology because this is, some had taught sinless perfection, and I don't know, I guess that's self-deception and hypocrisy. As Paul said, those who are prescribing circumcision, for example, they weren't practitioners of the law, they were just saying it. And James said that whatsoever kind of man will keep the whole law, but it says he will offend in one point, has become and remains a guilty one of all the law. So it says inevitably we will offend in one point, which then makes us guilty of all. So how could sinless perfection be advocated? In Galatians, Paul said the flesh and the spirit are contrary one to another, so that we can't always be doing what we're always desiring to do. Paul said he serves God with his mind. And this is all written out here. I'll provide this link to this article and this description. But don't back away from the Koine text, and don't assume that when someone says, well, this means that you don't habitually, continuously, ongoingly, uninterruptedly sin, which is striking because we have texts that say we aren't always continuously, uninterruptedly, mind, word, and action believing. So again, this was something I guess I just hadn't taken that seriously until we were working in this class. And when you notice this right here, this really stops the whole argument, because to be sinning is to be doing some kind of sin. Now, doing no kind of sin would include momentary, temporal, continual, persistent, any kind. But this just says we're doing no kind of sin. So it is a good case to help give the assurance for those who've trusted, believed Jesus Christ for everlasting life. And under all the circumstances in the Bible, we find people under many circumstances. We've found people fleeing throughout history. So they weren't taking, quote, a stand, being faithful, if you will, unto death. As we know, one church in the book of Revelation was asked to remain faithful unto death. Now that's quite a extraordinary thing, but it wouldn't suggest or imply that those who had lapsed under trials had not ever believed, and had not been those who were believing for a season. And that's why Paul even told Timothy, now you be ready and endure like a soldier. You be ready for hardships, and you be ready to preach, whether it's a seasonable, favorable time or an unfavorable time. So you have a blessed day. Enjoy this lesson. Well, let me move out the way here. There we go. So you can go through this. But I just found it fascinating when I looked at it. Noticed 24 words in each section. So